Before we add any fabric to our ball, we need to prep it by making these lines. This is one of the ways we keep all the layers straight and both sides symmetrical. The smooth styrofoam ball that comes with your kit has a hole on one pole and a demarcation on the other. I'm going to color in that demarcation just to make it easier to see on the video. The ball also will have a raised equator line that you can see I colored in there too, so you can see it. Take a pin and place it anywhere you like on that equator line. Push it in the ball just about halfway so it's sticking up. And then position your ball so that the hole is left to the pin. That's where we're going to make our line. Take your soft measuring tape, put it halfway up through that hole horizontally, and put a pin right through the tape to hold it there. Now you're going to run that tape horizontally under the pin that you put on the equator line, and then pin that measuring tape about halfway up through the demarcation on the other side. Now your tape measure makes a nice horizontal edge that we can draw our line on. So use your pen, make a line right along the top edge of that measuring tape. You take the pins out, half your ball will be finished, and then we do the same thing on the other side. Today I'm going to be talking about how to use pretty ribbons to make your quilted ornaments. You could make an ornament like this one that is all ribbon, or one like this that is ribbon and fabric. You can see on this white ornament, the main material is the sheer wire-edged ribbon with the silver edge, and then the white fabric. This ornament has wire-edged ribbon for both, for the accent color, the silver, and for the main material. But today we're going to focus on one like this snowflake ornament. For this ornament, you're going to need 32 pieces of the wire-edged ribbon with the wire taken out of the edge, and 24 pieces of the accent fabric. You'll also need a piece of fabric for the band around the circumference of the ball, and 20-inch lengths of whatever ribbon you want to use for the bow. We're going to use a smooth styrofoam ball, a decorative pin, some satin pins, a metal thimble, some good fabric scissors, and then some regular scissors, because when you're cutting the wire-edged ribbon, you don't want to use your fabric scissors. Also a soft measuring tape and a ruler. Now that we've prepped the ball, it's time to add some fabric. For the first layer of fabric on this ornament, we're going to use white cotton fabric. You need 4 rectangles of that fabric. You're going to take one piece and hold it horizontally. Then you fold down the top edge about 1/4 inch. Then fold that rectangle like you would a book. So you make a crease in the center. This is where your pin is going to go. Place that pin about 1/8 of an inch from the top edge. And then it's going to go straight up and down in the middle of your ornament where your lines cross. Make sure it lines up with the lines. Take the top right corner and fold it down to the center line. Top left corner and fold it down, overlapping just slightly so that you can use a pin to secure both of those corners at the bottom center. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side for your second triangle. When you do this, you want to make sure that the points of your triangle are as close as possible in the center of your ball. They should almost be overlapping. You really don't want to see any space there. Also, if you happen to see the pin showing through, that means you put your pin a little bit too close to the edge. You really want to do about 1/8 of an inch so that your pin will be completely covered up when you fold the corners down. Now you're going to do the same thing with 2 more pieces of fabric in the spaces that are left. Okay, now you have your 4 pieces for your first layer. You make sure that the folds on the triangles are lined up with your equator lines. You want to fold down the corners of your adjacent triangles. Just overlap them at the bottom and place a pin to secure them on the ball. Your pin should be placed right in the center between your 2 equator lines. That's how you know it's straight. Just smooth down the fabric, overlap it on the corners, and place a pin there to secure it. You're going to do that with each of the corners of your first layer. Now that we've secured all the corners, you have them all lined up with your equator lines. Everything looks straight. You have your first layer complete. Okay, now we're going to add our second layer to this ornament. We're going to use this pretty wire-edged ribbon. The wire has already been taken out before it was cut. You want to fold that ribbon in half like a book. Find that center spot for the pin. Place the pin right underneath the wire edging. Use your soft measuring tape to measure out a 1/4 inch from the center hole. This is where we're going to place that pin right on top of the fabric where that vertical fold is in the white fabric. Right on top of that, you're going to place your pin. You're going to make sure it lines up. Fold down the right top corner. Fold down the left top corner, overlapping just slightly so that you can secure them down at the bottom center with a pin. Then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. You want to make sure that your vertical lines are all lining up with the first layer. Just keep checking that as you go. Make sure everything is straight. And if you find that your ribbon is thin and it's pulling through, the pin is not holding it at the top point, just put that pin through a little bit into the edging so it'll hold better. All of these ribbon pieces will be a 1/4 inch from the center hole. See how they're lining up? Now we're going to add 2 more pieces in the spots that are left. Now you have your first 4 pieces. We're going to smooth down and overlap the corners of those adjacent triangles and pin them in place. Do that for all the triangles. Now we're going to add 4 more pieces of ribbon on this second layer in between the others. Same thing. You want to make sure that your pin is placed a 1/4 inch from the center hole. Use the same technique for the last 4 pieces of ribbon. Now that you have those 4 pieces secured, we're going to smooth out the corners of those adjacent triangles and overlap them at the bottom, pin them in so they're secured in place, just like you did for the first layer. Okay, you have 8 pieces of wire edge ribbon on your second layer there. Inspect it and see that all of the pieces look symmetrical and lined up with the equator lines. You've got your beautiful ribbon layer. Okay, now we have layer 1, layer 2, and we're about to do layer 3. The same white cotton fabric that we used for the first layer. You're going to use the same techniques, fold down the top a 1/4 inch, fold it in half so you can make a crease and find that center to put your pin about 1/8 of an inch from the top. At this time, the biggest thing we need to make sure we do is find the innermost ribbon pieces. So we put 4 pieces of ribbon down first and then 4 pieces on top of those. The first 4 make the innermost triangles. That's where you want to put these first 4 white pieces. We're going to put it 1/2 of an inch from the tip of the ribbon layer. Just place it right through the edging of the ribbon and that first white layer. We're going to line it up with the equator line on the ball and pin it in place. You can see that the first layer, the ribbon layer, and the third layer folds all should line up together. Do the same thing on the other side for your second piece of fabric. Place your pin 1/2 an inch from the tip of the ribbon triangle, right through the edging and the first cotton layer. Make sure everything is straight and lining up, and you'll have your second triangle. Do the same thing with 2 more rectangle pieces on the innermost triangles. Okay, now that you have 4 pieces in place, we're going to do that same thing we always do and pin down the adjacent corners. You're probably going to have to use 1 pin per corner this time. They may not overlap perfectly. If they do, that's great, but it's okay to use a separate pin for each corner. They still should line up in the center of your equator lines. Okay, now we have 4 pieces pinned down on the innermost triangles. We're ready to put the other 4 pieces of our third layer on the outermost ribbon triangles. Same techniques. You're still going to want to pin the point of your triangle 1/2 an inch from the tip of your ribbon triangle. So you find the ribbon triangle tip, measure 1/2 an inch, and place your pin right there in the middle on top of the edging through both layers. Make sure it lines up with your equator lines and keep everything straight. Do the same thing for all 4 pieces. Okay, now that you have your last 4 pieces on there, we're going to do the same thing again. Overlap those corners if you can, but if not, just use a pin per corner and secure them on the ball. And now you have 1, 2, 3 layers. Okay, now we have 1, 2, 3 layers, and our final layer is going to be with this wire edge ribbon again. Same techniques as before. Fold your ribbon in half to find the center. Place the pin just below the edge and figure out which triangle is the innermost triangle of layer 3. You want to put your first 4 pieces of ribbon on the innermost triangles. This time we're going to measure about 1/4 inch from the tip of the white fabric layer. Make sure that all your vertical lines are lining up with the other layers and the equator. And make sure it's straight in the middle of that 3rd layer. Now you're going to do the same thing with the second piece opposite the first one on the other side. You're going to take your ribbon rectangle, place your pin just below the edging, and put that pin straight through that 3rd layer, measuring from the tip of the white 3rd layer about 1/4 inch and lining everything up, keeping it straight. Now you're going to do that same thing with the other 2 pieces on top of the innermost triangles. Now that you have those 4 pieces secured, we're going to do the same thing as always and place pins in those corners of the adjacent triangles. Smooth your ribbon out on the ball and place a pin in each of the corners. If you look closely, you can see how the vertical lines all line up with all the layers and the equator lines. Now that you have the first 4 pieces of ribbon secured, it's time to add the next 4. These will be secured on top of those outermost triangles. These 2 will be 1/4 inch from the point of the white 3rd layer. Now that you have those 4 pieces of ribbon secured on your ball, just going to tack down the adjacent corners as always. When I pinned this one down, I found the hole that's in the styrofoam ball, and I'm just going to put a pin there to remind me where it is so the bow doesn't end up in that spot. Okay, now you have 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of your ribbon pattern complete. Half of your ball is finished. Okay, now that we have all of our fabric and ribbon layers secured on the ornament, it's time to place the band around the circumference. I have this pin in here because that's showing me where the hole is in the styrofoam ball. I don't want my bow to end up there. What we're going to do is look at both sides of the ball and decide which spot is going to be the top. Take that fabric that you're going to use for the band and fold it twice lengthwise so that your band is about 1 inch wide. Then you're going to pin the end of that band where you decided the top of your ornament is going to be. It's going to line up with the vertical folds of your 4th layer. Then you want to pull that band fabric snug as you wrap it around the circumference of your ball, making sure that you cover up any of the pins that you used to pin down your 4th layer. When you get to the top again, you're going to use a couple of pins to pin that in place. Just overlap the spot where you started the band, put a couple of pins there. And then you're just going to use some scissors to snip off the excess fabric. I decided to dress this band up a little bit with a silver ribbon. Just going to pin that ribbon at the start of the band in the center and run that ribbon all the way around the ornament in the center of that band. When I get back to the top, I'm just going to pin that silver ribbon in place and trim the excess ribbon. Now you have a nice band around the outside of your ornament covering up those pins from your 4th layer, and you're ready for the bow. For this ornament, we're going to make a 3-layer bow. To do that, you need 3 20-inch long ribbons, a decorative pin, and a few satin pins. First, we're going to take the widest ribbon. I have a 5/8 ribbon for the 3rd layer, the bottom layer. It's best to do this layer separately from the other 2 so that it can be more secure in the ornament. I'll show you how to do that. First, you need to take your ribbon and place a satin pin about 1/2 inch from the end of that ribbon. Use a ruler to measure from the satin pin about 2.5 inches out. Place the pin through at the 2.5 inch mark. Bring that ribbon around and you will have your first loop. Now we're going to make a loop opposite that one, 2.5 inches out. Place the pin through. Now you have 2 loops. You're going to make these loops back and forth like a fan on this satin pin until you have 6 to 8 loops, 3 or 4 on each side. Once you get your 6 to 8 loops, you can fan out your loops on the pin so it looks pretty. And then we're going to place it in the center at the top of our ornament. Same place where we attached the band at the top. And put it right in the middle of that satin ribbon. Okay, the next thing we want to do is add a little security to that third layer. We just want to make sure it's nice and snug and there's no chances of it coming out when you're hanging it or holding the ornament and putting it on the tree year after year. So we're just going to add a few satin pins down at the bottom, close to the center, hiding under the loops here, just for some added security. Okay, we're going to do the top layer of the bow now. You want your narrow ribbon. You need an angled tip on it. Take your decorative pin and place it near the end of that ribbon. Next, you're going to measure from the pin head about 5 inches. This will form your loop for the hanger. Measure out 5 inches, stick the decorative pin back in at the 5-inch mark, and now you have your hanger. Now you want to measure from the pin head about 2 inches. Make a 2-inch loop by placing the pin through the ribbon at the 2-inch mark. We're going to use the same method that you used for the bottom layer of the bow. The only difference is that you're only doing 2-inch loops this time instead of 2.5 inches. So make about 6 loops, 3 on each side, about 2 inches long. Now that we have our 6 loops for layer number 1, just want to trim the excess ribbon. And now we're going to use this red ribbon to make the second layer. We want an angled tip on the ribbon, just looks prettier. Place that decorative pin through about a 1/2 inch from the end of that ribbon, and then measure out 2 inches from the pin head to form the loops, just like you did for the first layer. You're going to make about 6 loops, 2 inches long for layer number 2. Okay, now that you have your loops finished, just snip the excess ribbon, and now you can fan out your loops on the pin to make it look pretty. Then you pin that right on top of your third layer in the middle at the top of your ornament. Just go straight through the third layer, and you have your 3-layer bow on top of your beautiful quilted ornament. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.